Hello, everyone. Welcome to our meeting tonight. We have a motion moved by Councillor Austin, seconded by Councillor Burton McDowell. Be it resolved at the joint special council meeting of the Corporation of the Township of Narren-Hyman and the Corporation of the Township of Baldwin of February 18, 2025 is now open at 7:02 p.m. All in favor? That's carried. And is there any declaration of pecuniary interest? Nope. Moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Cote. Be it resolved that Mayor Amy Mazie will chair the joint special council meeting. All in favor? That's carried. So that's the appointment of the chair, and now we will begin our public meeting, which starts with my. Everyone.
Oh, you gotta turn it on.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate your attendance. We would also like to acknowledge our federal and provincial candidates that are here. This is our second town hall meeting that they have all attended. We want to thank them for their interest in this issue and their commitment to staying informed with the situation. They have been a great help to us every step of the way. We have federal candidate for the NDP, Andrian Chenier, provincial candidate, independent, Michael Mantha, provincial candidate, NDP, David Tamersky. Thank you. We will also later be hearing from MP Carol Hughes, Manitoulin, Algoma, and Kapuskasing, and Mark Serre, Nickelbelt. So many of these people have been very instrumental in helping us in our cause. We also have our mayors, Mayor Doug Gervais, Mayor Vern Gorham with Baldwin, and Mayor Kevin Burke with Sauble Spanish River. We have Baldwin Council members, Jason Cote, Burke McDowell, Ray Maltese. And then we have our Narren Council members, Councillor Austin, Councillor McDonald, and Councillor McVeigh, and myself, Mayor Mazie.
We also have Mark Lepine
Yeah,
in
sorry.
the audience as well.
We missed him on the
Yeah.
sheet, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lepine. Yes. Tonight, I know we all have many concerns and many of us have things that we would like to say. I would like to ask everyone to be respectful. We are going to have one person speak at a time. Please do not interrupt or distract the speaker. And if there is a problem, you will have to ask to leave. And we don't want it to get to that point. We want to hear what you have to say and we want you to hear us. So thank you so much for coming out and let's get this started. I think next we're going to hear from Mayor Gervais.
Thank you very much, Mary. And we'll welcome guests. Just like to mention, we have three councillors from Espanola, Councillor Gallion, Councillor Deputy Kelly, and Councillor Jerry Mascott. Thank you very much for being here, for the support. Well, good evening. However, it's not such a good evening as we continue to discuss this unfortunate topic. My name is Douglas Derva, as we mentioned earlier. I'm the Mayor of Espanola, Town of Espanola. Speaking on behalf of the Town of Espanola, I wish to commend my colleagues, Mayor Amy Mazie, Mayor Vern Gorham, and Mayor Kevin Burke for remaining steadfast in his challenging circumstances. The people of all of our municipalities need strong leaders to hold the province to account on this matter. The Spanish River is part of the lifeblood of our communities and those who reside near. It must have clarity regarding proposed plans that continue to be the subject of many unanswered questions. Espanola stands in solidarity with its neighbors on this matter. And at this time, it is critical that the more information we share with us so that the people of our communities have a firm understanding of what might take place, the associated risks, and what plans are being put in place to mitigate those risks. The people deserve answers, and they deserve the opportunity to have their voices heard once they have been fully informed. It's clear to me that this situation deserves more care and attention by the province and any other level of government or agency that has responsibilities associated with this matter. And as we see the support here tonight, I want to thank everybody for being here, and thank you very much.
Spanish River. Welcome to our distinguished guests, members of parliament, all our councillors. Nice to see everyone out to support us. Agnew Lake and the lower Spanish watershed reaches out to the waters of Lake Huron and is home to tens of thousands of our residents. These are life-giving waters for our communities and habitat for the natural world around us. No amount of increased radioactive material is in the existing tailing site is acceptable to put the region at risk. The watershed is already at risk. The levels recorded in the creeks feeding Agnew Lake are beyond limits. How can we accept more radioactive material as a cover for tailing area? I ask that all the municipalities and the First Nations support us in our efforts. The project should be halted immediately and indefinitely. Thank you.
Again, I just want to give a quick report on attending the Roma conference with CAO Ketchiba. It was January 19th to the 21st in Toronto, and pretty lousy weather. Not that that matters, but we went there, we had an agenda, we wanted answers to our questions. We wanted the Altma site remediated. And we wanted the transportation of the NORM or the uranium tailings to be halted. We met with the NDP. It was very brief. It was about 5 minutes. We met with the Liberal MP, Ted Hsu, and that took about 10 minutes, and we couldn't quite convince him that it was an issue. He kept coming back to the fact that there was niobium, and that's what he called it. And we had to consistently emphasize the fact that it wasn't just niobium in the cover that we're talking about. It's uranium tailings from Bocage mine. There's heavy metals. And he's right, niobium isn't a problem, and that's not the problem that we're worried about. And it was short. Next we had our meeting with the Honorable MPP George Pirie, who is currently serving as the Minister of Mines. He gave us tons of time. We should have had 15 minutes. He gave us at least 30 minutes. He was very attentive. He was warm and welcoming. I just can't say enough good things about our meeting. He didn't interrupt at all. We gave our presentation. We had about 10 other people in attendance, some by Zoom, most with the Ministry of Mines. He did agree to get us answers to our questions. Now, he did say we would have them a few weeks ago, and we haven't received them yet, but, we are hopeful that we will get them soon. You'll hear more about that tonight. And since then, a provincial election has been called. We've also heard from Mark Stewart confirming that they are working on the responses to our questions, but no answers will be available till at least March 15th of this year, at the earliest. There has been more progress, I guess, at the Alma site, Agnew Lake, and they want to present all the information at one time. Second, he did agree to remediate the Alma site. And he said he was very confident of his Minister of Mines Sudbury team and that they would get the site fixed up for us. So that was good news. But third, he did not agree to halt the project. We didn't expect him to. So that wasn't a horrible loss. All in all, it was a great meeting. He was very engaging and attentive. Our concerns were definitely heard, and he agreed to 2 out of 3 of our requests. We just need to continue to push forward to get our answers and to stop the transportation of uranium tailings. Thank you. And next we'll hear from Belinda Ketchler, our CAO, summarizing the findings for the Hutchinson Environmental Sciences.
Just bear with us a minute. Gotta. It's warming up. Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all so much for attending our meeting tonight. I just want to introduce myself for those who don't know me. I'm the CAO for the Township of Narren-and-Hyman. And my goal tonight is to provide you with a high-level summary of findings from the most recent environmental reports that we had conducted by Hutchinson Environmental Sciences. Just to be clear, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, but I have taken a lot of time to review the information in these reports. And I'll do my best to break them down so we can have an informed community discussion about this. Next slide, please. So just to give you all a bit of background, for those of you who may just have very recently heard about this issue, the Agnew Lake mine is located north of Agnew Lake, as well as the tailings management area is also located north of Agnew Lake. This site was an active uranium production from 1974 until it closed in the 1980s. And as many of you know, uranium tailings have been a longstanding concern due to their potential environmental impacts. Recently, the Ministry of Mines designated the Agnew Lake tailings management area to receive 18,600 cubic meters of niobium tailings from the Nova Bocage mine. These materials are currently being excavated from Nipissing First Nation lands and an adjacent MTO gravel pit. We were told that this material is classified as naturally occurring radioactive material, or NORM for short. When we first heard about this plan in 2024, many of us were obviously very concerned. We're talking a huge amount of material, approximately 13,000 gravel truckloads, carrying 34,000 tons of material. Once placed on site, if it does come here, this would be an equivalent area of 4 football fields, mounted to about a meter thick. Of course, we want to recognize how important it is that this material be remediated from Nipissing First Nation. It's in a residential area and we agree that it needs to come out of that area. But what we don't want is it to cause further health concerns or environmental concerns to our community. So this raised some questions. What is the impact of receiving the niobium tailings and what exactly does this material contain? Does the addition of these tailings to the site add to the possible contamination of ground and surface water? Well, that's what led us to commission these studies. We needed a clearer picture of the environmental stability of the site and any risks that possibly could be imposing on our drinking water. So our township, along with the surrounding municipalities of the Township of Baldwin, Township of Sauble Spanish River, and the town of Espanola, commissioned these 3 independent studies from Hutchinson Environmental Sciences Limited. We're going to call them Hutchinson after this because that's a mouthful. So if you want to dive into these reports in full, they are available on our website. So Hutchinson's first report reviewed the technical environmental performance of the Agnew Lake Tailings Management Area. It examined potential implications of relocating the tailings to this site. The second report assessed potential contamination migration pathways to our local water sources. And the third report provided a review of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's regulatory oversight report for the year 2023. And this report allowed the township to submit written comments of interference to the CNSC, that's Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. We're gonna call them that as well. Regulatory oversight, meaning as we feel that the oversight of this area and site is not up to what it should be. Next slide, please. So what did these reports uncover? So we have a map here. It's probably hard to see. It shows the site and the different dams that they have and dikes and how it just kind of the protective layers that go around the tailings. This will be available on our website as well, so you can take a bit closer look at it. So one of the main takeaways is that the Ministry of Mines 2023 annual report to the CNSC identified several contaminants of concern in groundwater, surface water, soil, and sediment around the site. These include uranium, cobalt, arsenic, iron, cyanide, radium-226, and several more heavy metals. The concerning part is many of these contaminants exceed both federal and provincial environmental quality standards. Uranium in groundwater and surface water, as well as arsenic and sediments, are particularly concerning to us. If these contaminants migrate towards our drinking water sources, they could pose very significant risks to public health. Next slide, please. So this slide gives us a visual of where some of this testing was done. And just to clarify, this testing was not done by our consultants. This is right out of a Ministry of Mines report to the CNSC. So here's what it found. To the west of the site, I know it's hard to see, John Creek is on the west side. So there they found high levels of aluminum, copper, and iron. At the west dam, that's just the next site over towards the middle, sampling showed high levels of uranium, cobalt, arsenic, copper, and iron. The middle dam area, sampling showed high levels of free cyanide, uranium, aluminum, cobalt, copper, cadmium, iron, lead, and nickel. And sample taken to the east, as we're getting closer to Mystic Creek, again shows exceedances of aluminum, copper, iron, cobalt, lead, nickel, zinc, and cadmium. Despite all these exceedances, the minister's report stated there was no reportable events taking place at the Agnew Lake Management Area in 2023. All these testing was done in 2023. So we find this statement a bit hard to reconcile with what the data is actually showing us. So another major issue identified in the Ministry of Mines report is the lack of a complete monitoring program for this existing site. It's noted that there is an insufficient number of groundwater wells to assess the full extent of contamination migration, as some of the groundwater wells were dry and could not be sampled, and some of the wells noted were not even sampled at all. And while some key contaminants were noted in the report, there's nothing further in the report that shows that the ministry took further steps to investigate or address any of these concerning exceedances. So what does that mean for us? Well, the bottom line is we don't have a complete picture of the scale of the contamination. Next slide, please. The Hutchinson reports also identified 2 primary pathways through which contaminants could possibly migrate to our drinking water sources. The west pathway involves surface water draining from the site via John Creek to the Spanish River, which eventually flows into Agnew Lake. This area supplies drinking water to thousands of residents. This pathway spans approximately 130 kilometers. The east pathway involves contaminants potentially flowing through Manistic Creek into the Spanish River, which is the main source of water for Narren Center. This pathway is much shorter, approximately 27 kilometers. In addition to these pathways, a fault line has been identified under the site that could allow deeper groundwater to migrate towards Agnew Lake and potentially even affect Georgian Bay. These pathways are concerning because of the long distances that they can carry contaminants. That's why this is not just a localized issue here in Narren Center. It's something that could impact a huge area. Slide, please. So this slide is a map of the pathway. You can see the site in red. Then it flows to the west into John Creek, flows in a northerly direction into where it hits Center Creek, and then into the upper Spanish, which eventually flows southward towards Agnew Lake. As we mentioned, this is about 130 kilometer distance. While some contaminants and radionuclides will settle and be absorbed over this route, this is not the guarantee that none of them will reach Agnew Lake. So this map is a little bit zoomed in because the distance is a lot shorter. You can see the site again in red up in the upper left-hand corner. It's flowing to the east to Manistic Creek, which flows in a southeasterly direction, hitting the Spanish River. This is 27 kilometers to our water treatment plant. So like we talked about, contaminants may settle to the bottom of the waterway along this pathway, but the studies caution that not all contaminants are mitigated this way, and their effects over time are still a big concern. And this backs up what we're actually seeing in our water testing at our water treatment plant. We are in fact seeing trace amounts of these contaminants, including uranium, cyanide, benzene, aluminum, and arsenic, have already been detected in the Spanish River. I would like to note that they are all at safe levels. However, their presence alone in the river shows we need to be vigilant. We can't just ignore them. So what we need to ask is, will the new materials that are proposed to be brought in, are they going to make this problem worse? Or are they going to make it better? This is still radioactive materials that we're bringing in. Slide, please. So back in September, at our last public meeting, we heard a lot from the two ministries that attended about the ground cover at the Alma site being compromised due to erosion. Could be from the weather, it could be from ATVs using the site, hunters using the site. This has allowed rain and runoff water to run through the tailings, which has caused the migration of these metals and radionuclides to enter the groundwater. We also heard from the ministries about how the niobium tailings could help repair the erosion. However, what wasn't emphasized is that these erosion issues have been ongoing for many years, and it's due to lack of maintenance. The ministry has been aware of these problems since at least 2015, yet little has been done to address them. The reports from the ministry show that they were aware that there was significant erosion at the East Barrier Dike. And how do we know that this erosion is having a detrimental effect on our environment? Well, just the high levels of uranium concentrations in groundwater, up gradient of the East Dike and Mill Dam proves this. So another major concern that these reports highlight is the low level of oversight provided by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Their 2023 regulatory report does not contain enough site-specific detail to verify their claims that site conditions are satisfactory. The report also fails to acknowledge the contaminant exceedances in the groundwater and surface water and sediment, as well as deteriorating condition of the site's cover and other infrastructure. While the CNSC staff have made a statement at the Commission's regulatory meeting on January 29, 2025, that the proposed project to bring in the niobium tailings has been paused until they're satisfied that the ministry's plan is safe, Unfortunately, their track record of oversight on this site does little to ease our concerns. Additionally, the Ministry of Mines has yet to release the promised environmental monitoring report and risk assessments, even though they assured us back in September of 2024 that this would be forthcoming. This length of time raises significant red flags for our municipalities. Not only does it undermine our confidence in how the site is being managed, it's raising concerns that we don't accurately understand the risk that this site has historically been causing. That's it. Next slide, please. So what are the implications for our townships, municipalities, and surrounding areas? Well, these findings are very concerning, particularly with regard to our drinking water sources. While there is no direct evidence that contaminant had reached Agnew Lake, trace amounts of these contaminants have been detected in water samples taken from the Spanish. Currently, as we mentioned, these level of contaminants are below the allowable limits, but their presence in the river means we need to take this seriously. So how do we move forward? Well, we believe we need to work together to fully understand how far these contaminants have spread and push for action. Our council has discussed several options, including the possibility of conducting our own independent water testing at Agnew Lake and Mystic Creek. At the same time, we're in discussions with the Ontario Clean Water Agency about expanding our water sampling efforts at the Nairn Water Treatment Plant to determine the presence and concentration of radioactive elements. It's essential that we continue to advocate for the improved groundwater and surface water monitoring at the site to ensure that we have accurate, transparent, and comprehensive data. Additionally, we need to advocate for immediate repairs to the East Barrier Dike to contain the contamination that's already happening. So we will keep pressing the ministry for answers and for the release of the data that demonstrates that they have a safe rehabilitation plan for the site and that the materials that they want to bring in, we want them to prove to us that they're safe before we let them come in. We also want to continue to work alongside our neighboring municipalities and First Nations to keep residents informed through public statements and additional information sessions such as these. Protecting our community's health and drinking water remains our top priority, and we have to stand together to demand the answers and solutions we need. So as I mentioned earlier, these reports are posted on our website. I'm going to post these presentations that we're showing tonight as well. They're going to take a few days to get up there. But please check out our website. It's www.nairncenter.ca. If you go to the community tab, you scroll down, and you'll see the Agnew Lake Tailings Management Area. So many of the documents that we have received already are up there, and we're going to continue making that better. So thank you all for bearing with me through this huge amount of data and information. And thanks again for coming. Never mind if it's on. Yeah. Yes, we'll get some.
So thank you all. My name is Renee Lloyd and I work with Northwatch. We're our regional environmental coalition. I'm very much a generalist like Linda. I'm not a technical expert. I'm really pleased to be here and I'm so impressed and so grateful for the work that the townships are doing. This is just such impressive work. And it's so important that the communities engage on these issues. As we now all have seen as the story continues with the Agnew Lake tailings, without oversight, without pressure, we can't rely on a robust regulatory system being in place that will actually protect the environment and protect human health. So my task this evening is to update you on the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission meeting, which was on January 29th. And at that meeting, the meeting is of interest to us because at that meeting, the regulatory oversight report was presented. So I'm going to first give just a little context, talk about the regulatory oversight reports and how they fit, excuse me, in the overall system. So 10, 15, 20 years ago, most of the licenses for nuclear facilities were quite short. They were 1 or 2 years. And so public municipalities, First Nations, we had the opportunity to get updates and intervene, make comments, at a fairly regular basis. Those license periods have stretched out to now many of them are 10 years. Some are being proposed to be 20 or 30 years. Currently, the longest are 10 years. And so that's a long period of time for communities and members of the public, First Nations, to not get a window into what's happening at that nuclear operation. So the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, CNSC, developed something they call regulatory oversight reports. And these come out for most categories, they come out every year. And there's one on nuclear power plants, there's one on uranium processing, there's one on a certain set of sites, the federal legacy nuclear sites managed by Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. And they come out every year, but the Agnew Lake site and the Elliott Lake uranium sites, Pronto, and some other closed and decommissioned uranium mine sites across the country get reported on only every 3 years. And so the regulatory oversight report on uranium mines and decommissioned mines comes out every 3 years. And so that is how we actually learned about the issues at the Agnew Lake tailings management area, and also the proposal to send the niobium waste from Nipissing First Nation lands to the Agnew Lake tailings management area. And that happened in 2017 in the 2017 report. So as Belinda mentioned, in 2015, during a routine inspection, there was a deterioration of the tailings cover identified. And that means that the uranium mine, so the cover goes on, there's uranium mine tailings, which are radioactive and give off radioactivity. And they have to have a cover. Now that here it's a soil cover or an earth cover. In Elliott Lake, some of them are water covers, some of them are dry covers. Here it's a dry cover, it's a layer of soil. And that cover had broken down to such a degree that the uranium tailings were exposed. And they were exposed sufficiently that at some places, there was a dose level 8 times the regulatory limit. So the regulatory limit is the limit. There's no safe level of exposure to radiation, to radioactivity. But despite that, as in all things, we have permissible limits or regulatory limits. So the regulatory limit is 1 millisievert per hour. And it was identified that there were doses of 8 millisieverts per hour. Now, that wasn't identified in the report. We found that in subsequent, more detailed. The regulatory oversight report for 2017, 2020, 2023 gives about 1 page to the Agnew Lake mine tailings area. So not a lot of detail, very general. They do flag that there are some issues with deterioration of the tailings cover. And they did identify in the 2017 report initially that there was a plan to address that failure of the tailings cover by importing these niobium waste or uranium processing waste from Nipissing First Nation. So that was 2015 identified. 2017, the plan is identified. We hired Hutchinson, the same consultants that the township has hired. Hutchinson Scientific assisted us greatly going through both. We looked at the Elliott Lake and the Agnew Lake mine plans and identified really serious concerns, which Belinda has outlined with the Agnew Lake site, and also raised real questions about the plan to bring niobium waste. Chief among them, that there'd been no assessment from what we could determine of what the effects would be of adding those niobium tailings to the uranium mine tailings. So potentially, so from the Ministry of Transportation perspective, Ministry of Mines perspective, they were solving two problems with one, because they needed to get the waste out of the Nipissing First Nation lands, and they needed to repair the cover. So they were looking at it as two problems for the price of one. We were looking at it, two solutions for the price of one. We were looking at it as two problems for the price of one. Potentially, maybe not. But there has been no disclosure, there's been no examination that's been publicly shared of the risk assessment work that's been done. And that's pretty basic, like that's pretty basic work. So all that's the context. So then 2017 report, 2020 report, very similar kind of description of the Agnew Lake mine tailings. 2023, still fairly description. In each of these reports, this transfer of waste is imminent. It's still imminent, apparently. So we come to the public opportunity to comment. So what we have is only the opportunity to send written submissions. These are public meetings, but there are no public comment. We can't go and speak to the commission. They have very recently started allowing First Nations to speak to the commission, and that's a very good improvement. But they haven't yet not gone the next step and permitted the public to speak. We can speak in hearings. Not every license gets a hearing. We heard from Ministry of Northern Development and Mines at the meeting in September that the license would be up for renewal, and we heard from the CNSC staff that for license hearings, the public can speak, but what we didn't hear is that there are many exceptions to that, including the licensing for the Agnew Lake mine. There is a license about to be renewed, but there is not a public hearing, and we're going to have to push to get the opportunity to even see and comment on that application, and that's something I think we should consider going forward. So we get to the commission hearing. First of all, the commission meeting. Northwatch has submitted a written submission, and the townships have made a written submission, and we submitted very detailed commentary. There are 4 other reports on quite separate matters first, and then we go to the section of the agenda that is on the uranium mines, but it's not just on the closed and decommissioned uranium mines, it's on all uranium mines. And so there are a number of presentations, submissions and presentations from mostly First Nations and others in Saskatchewan concerned about the active mines. We are part of the written submission, so we're listed at the end of the agenda, and they come at the end of the agenda to sort of open questions on the written submissions. And it might not seem like we did that well, but we did very well. It is really difficult to register with the commission. So we have 6 appointed commissioners, and then we have a very large staff. The commissioners are at least nominally the decision maker. It's very hard to register with the commissioners. It's very hard in these situations to get the commissioners to take up an issue on behalf of the community. And I won't say that they took up our issue, but they did ask questions. We had 3 commissioners ask 4 questions. We had a commissioner ask a question, an opening question, which was just sort of to the effect of, so we heard some comments on the Andrew Lake mine, and the commission staff responded and gave sort of a précis of the situation from their perspective, which is basically, there's not really a problem. There has been some failure in the tailings cover. We've got, we've been monitoring it, and it's going to be fixed. That was the first question, and then the second question was about communication between the commission and the Ministry of Mines. The next question was a little discouraging because it simply asked, it was a second commissioner, simply asking who's the licensee. So I thought, okay, well, they're maybe not reading our submissions very carefully. And then the third question was the most interesting, and it was about the niobium. and one, a general question about what are the characteristics. And it led into a conversation almost about the, concerns that we have about that potential synergy between the niobium being added to the uranium, tailings. And that was a very good discussion, and there were 4 different commission staff people involved in providing an answer. And I think it provided a number of points that we can follow up on with individual commission staff members or with the commission more generally, particularly around the risk assessment and around the future licensing process. So I haven't done any of that follow-up yet. I knew we were having this meeting this evening, and I really, we're prepared to do more work on this. We want to do more work on this, but we'd really like to do it in, in sync with the work in the interest of the townships and of the concerned First Nations. So I think that there's potential to have good follow-up with the commission, and particularly to get more insight into the risk assessment. And I would suggest that what we do as a next step is that we simply request information. We follow up from the conversation in the commission meeting on the 29th, and we make a number of information requests. And if we don't get satisfaction fairly quickly, that we then do an access to information request, and then we take it from there. And I think I'm really pleased, very pleased to have MP Saray here. I think he can be of real assistance to us. He is parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources. So it's, I'm really grateful that you're here tonight. So thank you all for your time, and thank you for all your good work.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd, that was great. You're obviously an expert in the field, unlike myself. So I'm going to try to summarize the CNSC, so that's the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission's responses to our questions. So we submitted questions and we received these answers early October. So we received these in October, but we haven't heard from the Minister of Mines yet, or Ministry of Mines. So obviously it's about the proposed transfer of niobium bearing material in the next slide. We're gonna go through the first questions really fast just to make it fun. Will there be health and safety plans? Next slide. Yes, there will. Yeah, there's gonna be a health and safety plan. It's a requirement. We know there is one. Ecometrics did one in 2024, and it's a 5-year monitoring plan, and we want a copy of it. Will we get it? I don't know, but we've asked a lot. Next slide. Question 2, will there be ongoing communication and consultation? Absolutely. Next slide. What they like to say is that the CNSC recognizes the value of engaging with municipalities, and they're happy to work with municipalities. I gotta say, they're actually great. We send emails to the head CNSC guy, and we hear back within 24 hours. And as a tiny municipality, there's lots of people that blow us off. But they have been great to work with. A lot of people have, but we've gotten answers and they really care. Maybe I need to I'm not a nuclear scientist, but the CNSC is kind of like the umbrella safety. They're independent. And then the Ministry of Mines has the license. And so the CNSC tells them what they need to do to maintain the license. Like, for instance, the CNSC told us, I know I'm going off script, Melinda, it's okay. The CNSC told us, look, you need more cover up at Ultima. We don't care if it's the niobium stuff or something else, but you need more cover. So the CNSC is focused on safety, and they're impartial, and that's what they're concerned about. Next slide. Will the site be open for future dumping of contaminated materials? Maybe. Next slide. Right now, it is not an open site. You would need to apply for another license, and the CNSC would have to determine that it was safe. And they would have to amend the license. Would we be informed if this happened? Well, we would like to hope so, but we weren't last time. So, you know, that's something that could actually happen. Next slide. Yeah, this is where it starts to get a little more interesting. So will there be increased protection or inspections to remediate the control of the surface waters? Where do we find the test results? Will there be measures in place to maintain? What provisions will be in place to ensure the tailings aren't leaching to contaminants, because it's quite a high area, and so it can go downstream. And so this is their answer. Next. That they are confident that the Ministry of Mines can take care of all of this. I'm not being sarcastic, that this is their answer. They feel, and he, when we spoke to the minister, he was very confident in his, Sudbury team. And the one hiccup is that the CNSC had not quite accepted their plans to manage the contact water before the cover is fully in place. Maybe that's not making sense. So like right now, it's exposed and there would be runoff water, and what's happening to that water before the cover is in place. So that's the one issue they have with the site right now that has to be resolved for the project to move forward. Next. So the CNSC is required, to conduct surface water quality on an annual basis for the first 5 years, additional to the things that are already expected. So we only found out about this in 2024, but you can see they were already doing annual inspections in 22 and 23. So they haven't just reacted to our attention to it, which is kind of a good thing, I think. Next slide. Who is responsible for the ongoing regulation? We know, next slide, it's the CNSC. Yeah, and they're going to supervise it and make sure that it's healthy and safe and secure. Next slide. So the CNSC's slogan is we will never compromise on safety, but we do know there was radiation levels 8 times higher than what is considered safe. Why are we still here with the same issue 10 years later and with an even bigger problem? And then also the question, there's a hot spot in the bottom left corner that is not going to be covered by the cover at this point. That might change. Let's see the answer. The CNSC found areas where the TMA cover had degraded. This did not pose an immediate hazard to casual users of the site or to the environment around the site. But it is an issue, and they will look into it further. Next. So they did ask us to issue the license. They were told to have a proper cover and a gamma dose rate survey. Next. And they did affirm that they would do that. Next. So this is where we find out the average dose is 1.085 microsieverts. And then we get up to 6.4 and 8.1. So before we all lose our minds over that, take a look at the bottom number. That you would need to spend more than 922 hours per year in that area. Don't do that. I don't know, I don't even know if you can get into the site well enough to take your RV in there or a tent. Just don't do that. Do not hunt or fish up there. Next. The permit, they did approve the niobium bearing material to come in, and they gave an amended license for that, so that would solve the problem and repair the cover. Next. But even though it was all approved, remember we had COVID starting in 2019, and they had issues getting different things. And so then the CNSC asked them to, do another gamma survey. Next. And there we have 9.1 millisieverts. And at the west end, there wasn't any readings collected at the time. And the west end does need more study. That is the area that they do know has radiation, but they haven't, they don't, there isn't a clear plan of when they will cover it. And is there another slide? One left. Yep, this is, yes, we've kind of covered this already. But those are the answers that we received from the CNSC, and perhaps you find that confusing. I have read this many times. It is a lot to process. Just talk to myself or Linda after, and we'll clarify. We will try to clarify. We're not computer scientists. And now we would be pleased to hear from our member of parliament, Carol Hughes. And then after, Mark Sarin.
Thank you very much, and obviously you have come a long way from when you first started. And I am certainly pleased to have been able to assist you in helping move that needle to where you are today. You have done immense amount of work. I know that the concerns remain. Certainly, as representatives, we're here to take some direction from you. We're not here to tell you what to do or that, but you know, the guidance, this is the part that we do, and you know, that's where the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission came into play when we were having a discussion. This is what we can do. This, you know, the Minister of Energy and Environment, Environment and Energy, is one of the entities. And I remember having that conversation and saying, well, okay, so this has been since 2015. They're saying, yes, we monitor this very closely, but nothing had been done since then, and they knew that there was these high levels. And so I'm still concerned that, you know, those high levels are still there, of course, and there's still not a lot of action, although they're doing some remediation to a certain degree. It's still not where it should be. I am concerned, and as you are, not just about putting it there, but transporting it as well, because when you start disturbing that ground or those tailings, you know, it kind of brings stuff back, and you guys are the experts. I'm not an expert in this, but I do share your concerns, and I share the concerns for the well-being of your communities, of your watersheds, of people who fish and hunt there, because for a while that site, people were going with their trikes there, or, you know, snowmobiling, whatever. And so that was again disturbing, right? So on that note, I just want to tell you that I'm certainly here to follow up on anything that you need to be followed up on. And I would certainly, I understand the apprehension that you have, with, you know, okay, so you're saying you're gonna do this now, but you didn't do it before. And so, you know, how can we be convinced that the constant monitoring will actually be there if it goes ahead? So I think you are doing the right thing. You've gotten some answers, but there's still a lot of questions that are not answered that would need to be answered before your communities will be confident enough to decide whether this project should go forward or not. So I am going to be here to help you along the way as you need me. For as long as I am here. I do want to say it's been an honor and a privilege to represent you in Parliament. I am retiring whenever the next election is going to be called, and we know that's going to be probably very soon. We are in a provincial election, and as you've indicated that you were hoping to have some answers on that. And as soon as the election is had, I would trust that you will be in touch with whoever is elected and help and make sure that individual, that provincial member of parliament, will be going to bat for you as well, and is very well versed on that. So I know that there are 2 candidates here right now, provincially, and 2 federally. I should say that as well. And I know that they are here because this matters. And that they want to be informed to be able to continue to work with you along the way. So again, thank you very much. And I just want to say congratulations on where you are at today. But there is so much more to do, so.
Thank you, and first off, Daryl, thank you for your 16 years of service, you're representing the writing well. And I know you have this, this issue at heart since, way back, and I know this summer when we got the first town hall in the year two, and you have worked as the minister, as mentioned, energy and natural resources, Jonathan Wilkinson, he mentioned that to me, and it's important, that when we look at the importance here, I think we clearly have heard and seen, and maybe just before I start, the drinking water. And also when you look at the environmental protection that is needed, we can't take that for granted. We don't have a second chance at it. So, it's really, really important, I really want to thank, Belinda and the four mayors, CEOs, for the way they presented the documents, the way they presented, and I know Graham did the research. It's really been, please take the time to look at the website and look at the way it's presented. And I'll go through a few of these points. There's 4 key recommendations that the CEO report to council on January 8th, 2025 was, 4 key concerns, because we know clearly that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission has failed. The Ontario Minister of Mines has failed. We don't have to, we heard the reports, we heard the analysis, and the in-depth information that was shared tonight. There is clearly no equivalent, there's no question that the regulators have not done their job. Okay, so obviously, when we look at the work that's being done, so like I said earlier, the 4 concerns that they have, the environmental concerns and the water quality. So we know that the issue of the studies here, and the two, the Ontario Ministry of Mines and the Canadian Nuclear kind of wanted to brush aside and say, oh, it's no william. And there is no proof that that's the only thing there. There's uranium, arsenic, cobalt, iron, cyanide. There's a lot of other materials on that side of Bocage. So there's more work that needs to be determined to make sure that by moving it, it doesn't affect the drinking sources of the Spanish River, obviously Agnew Lake, as showed here by Belinda earlier. So these levels, again, trying to push it aside, it's acceptable provincial standards, but we have to be cautious about that, and we got to keep pushing. The action that is needed on that first point for the key is looking at how do we look at more independent water testing of Agnew Lake. I think that's important. Right now, municipalities, 6,000, they shouldn't be paying for this. So the provincial and federal government should be, use the term ponying up, they gotta be behind municipalities, because that should not be a cost, and there should be more testing to be done, and make sure that there's that frequency, not just a one-time, but an ongoing testing of the water treatment plant on an ongoing basis. The second component that the SEAL report raised was the gaps in environmental monitoring, regulatory oversight, and the transparency. So the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and the Ontario Mines, like I said earlier, have not provided the promised environmental protection data and risk assessments. So I think that was clear. There is a promise to do that, but I assure you, and Carol will be behind this with me. We're going to make sure that we get those answers, because there's no transportation, there's no movement of that until this happens. Got to make sure, and we're going to work together with the mayors and make sure that doesn't happen.
in that, report, it's inadequate of the groundwater and surface water monitoring. There's not enough data, so we need to make sure that we continue with that data. Obviously, the disclosure, of the environmental monitoring and reports need to happen. So have been in direct contact, with the minister and myself directly, to the, Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to ensure that transparency and that regulatory accountability we heard that has been given to the province, Minister of Mines to do, and they've promised to come back. We've heard, here, that they promised to come back and do this. So we gotta make sure that, these conditions, because right now they say they're satisfactory. Okay, so what are the critical, kind of environment data that has not been made, public? So we gotta make sure that it's available. So also following up on the Ministry of Mines, requesting the overdue environmental risks, assessment and monitoring of the data to improve the transparency and oversight. So that needs to happen. So again, that's the second point that the seal report. The third point of the seal report mentioned about structural issues today, currently with the Agnew Lake site with million tailings. So now the proposal is, like 18 square meters of additional tailings, 18,000, sorry, additional tailings for the site to be looking at a long term. So obviously, as indicated, there's a east side, there's a barrier dike that was eroding, so that needs to be corrected and that needs to be addressed immediately. So that's something that hasn't been done. I mean, the risks are minimal right now, but there hasn't been, 13,000 transports of road coming in. So we got to make sure that transport doesn't happen. The structural erosion that we're talking about, because we need to get a third party. So I'm requesting a third party review of all the tailings to help support what all the municipalities have been doing. And that's so important. The other part too is directly with NRCan, is also looking at federal funding to make sure that the site is repaired to the current, before we even look at the standards today, before we look at even moving any more transportation. So that's going to be important to make sure that also happens. So thank you for, the way of the report. And the fourth aspect of the report is what we're doing tonight, obviously, the community and municipal action and public consultation. The township of Darren and Wyman and all the others, Baldwin and Espanola, all the adjacent municipalities and First Nations. We need to continue to make sure that we have public confidence. I mean, Nuclear Safety Commission, as you saw here, Linda mentioned, that's their number one statement about public safety. So we got to make sure that we have some confidence there, and that's where continue to push with greater municipal involvement to make sure that the federal and provincial decision makers, look at the Agnew Lake. So when we look at a letter that I sent to the commission, obviously to stop the transportation until all these issues have been addressed. So right now there's a halt, but I think there needs to be a permanent stop to all this. There's been, and the work that the municipalities have done and the feedback that we're going to tonight to make sure, because there's a lack of transparency and the environmental and monitoring reports, both by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and the Ministry of Mines. There's adequate water surface monitoring, and there's also concern about the impact proposed by the current tailings and the long-term stability. So all that to say that from the commission standpoint, as Brendan mentioned, there's 6 commissioners, and they had 3 or 4 good questions that need to be followed up on. And I just want to assure everyone that we're going to do everything we can together. I think Carol and I, from a federal perspective, I know we have the provincial representation here also, and obviously with the mayors and several councillors that are here to make sure that we get these answers, that we push back, and then we make sure that the federal and provincial oversight is there. And that we fight for answers and that we get the accountability that we need. So, I'll leave it at that because I think I'm the last one and we're going to want to answer some questions. But again, thank you so much for the way you presented. But we've got to continue, making sure that the safe, the site, the Agni Lake, tailings is currently safe. We have to make sure that, this transportation doesn't happen. There's a lot of issues that have not been addressed. Merci, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really, Mr. Saray and Ms. Hughes and Mr. Mantha, we had an emergency meeting in July and they showed up and they've been a great support. And, Ms. Hughes has said she didn't tell us what to do. They needed to tell us what to do in some ways. They're very experienced politicians. And they told us or counseled us on how we could navigate and get political backing for our, anyway, really great help. We're just gonna hear one more comment from Mayor Burke, and then we're gonna move to comments.
Just wanted. Aaron Huffman Council and Baldwin Council. In particular, the tireless efforts of CAO Ketchabah and Mayor Mayhew, your delegations to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. We're all indebted to you, behind you 100%. Thank you for trying to keep us safe.
Yeah, it's not so much me. It's really mostly Belinda. She's worked very hard and, she's just an integral part of this municipality and never disappoints. She's awesome. She's a rock star. That probably makes it all worth.
And some good eye cream.
Yeah. So now we'll hear comments from the floor, from you. Notice how we didn't say questions because we probably don't have the answers. We're not a panel of experts. We're hoping that you can keep it to 1 minute. And even if we don't know the answer here, we'll make note of it and try to get answers to questions. So, yeah, just one at a time, whoever would like, yeah, if you could come up and do your question here. Sure, yeah, come on up. Okay, it's pretty quick. Then everyone can hear you.
Yeah, the
If
last
you could
meeting we
state your
had-
name, sorry.
Sorry,
please.
Denise Susie.
Okay.
The last meeting we had, I thought we were sending out information, Freedom of Information Act. So me and my friend keep trying to figure out what came of that.
Well, you want me to get up?
Here.
Thank you.
So that's going out anytime now. We just wanted to give the parties involved a little more time to find a few more skeletons in the closet. So we are pursuing that to all the ministries, and we're hoping to have that information within the next, I think, 6 weeks. Yeah.
Is it 30, don't they have 30 days council?
No, there's a process, I think. You have a better understanding, but there's some recourse to.
Thank you, Mayor. Joseph Burke, CAO, down in Espanola. So when you submit a request of that nature, 30 days is the initial response timeline, but then there are things that you can potentially need to delay. So if there's a third party that needs to be notified by the disclosure, so the province in this case. For instance, if there's another level of government that's involved or another firm, consulting firm or something that was involved, then they would have to notify that party. That stops your clock as far as the freedom of information request is concerned, and a new clock starts where there's 20 days where they can respond. And then once that 20 days, then the initial 30-day clock starts again. So there are a variety of different ways that it can take longer than 30 days.
What day did we send it out?
We're just working on that right now. Just the more information we have, it'll give us a little more rope to deal with them.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ivan Chomon, and I'm the president of the Aggie Lake Property Group. I represent 50 private cottage owners that own Aggie Lake. I also represent one commercial property that owns Aggie Lake. And we, as everyone in this room, have the same concerns. Okay? I was here at the last meeting that we had back in September. My background is, I was manager of mines in the subway operation for over 40 years. I know about tailings. I consider myself an expert on tailings. So I can speak to the tailing issues when it comes to the type of materials that go through it. But I'm not here to talk about that tonight. I just want to, first of all, thank all the guests that have been here tonight, okay? Really appreciate everybody is really involved, okay? And you certainly want to make our environment and our water systems last many, many more years. The one issue that I saw tonight that wasn't brought up is, we talked about this material being transported. Hopefully it never gets transported. But if it did, for whatever reason, the issue that I have is that material is going to be transported approximately 180, 200 kilometers. You're gonna have 13,000 trucks on the highway. None of the other municipalities, other than Sudbury, have been notified that this transportation is going to go through their towns. Okay. I've contacted the OPPs, I've talked to people there. They have nothing on that. They don't know that that material could be going through their areas. And if there's an accident, and if you're telling me that we're gonna have 13,000 trucks and not have a spill someplace, something wrong. There will be something that will happen. These people need to know that that material is gonna be traveling. The people that rescue people need to know. The people in their township need to know that it's going through their township, and if there's a spill in their township, could it affect their waterways? Would that spillage go in their water systems or what? We don't know that. And for me, when we did our tailings in our mines, we kept the tailings within our area of accountability. We didn't ship it to anybody else. Didn't ship it to Elliott Lake. Didn't ship it to Falconbridge or Glencoe. We kept it within our premise. So I'm hoping that, further down the road, when we start talking about, how big is this liability? It's not just about Aggie Lake. It's from Nipissing to Aggie Lake. And then downstream from Aggie. Anyways, I just wanted to say that, so I thank you again very much for all the inputs I've had tonight. And I want special thanks to Linda. She did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Lynn O'Farrell and I live in the Carroll. I just wanted to follow up on Ivan's comments. When I read about the last bullet point on the fact sheet about the bedrock issue and deeper, the groundwater expecting to migrate as far south as Georgian Bay. So how many Georgian Bay cottage owners are aware of this? And can we not mobilize allies like the Georgian Bay Tourism Association? I mean, this is a huge issue.
we know that if this were a project that were planned to be happening in Southern Ontario, we know it wouldn't happen because there's so much public, market. You've got huge, populations. What we need to do, I think, is mobilize allies. I mean, the people in Georgian Bay that own these billion-dollar cottages are made aware of a uranium tailings and niobium tailings coming to our area that has potential of migrating into the waterway and then leaching south to Georgian Bay. I think there'll be a lot of interest in us. And we know, garner public interest and public, just raise awareness, it really helps our cause.
Ivan?
Yep.
So Ivan, thank you very much, and I think that you would be an asset to the community here with your knowledge on the tailings. You bring an interesting point because it was one that I was thinking of and that I have had many conversations with MWMO during their search for a city to, or a town to, I would say a town, not a city, to bring and store uranium waste. And so I just want to say it is something, and I know that when the NWMO first started their project, they were saying that, you know, every town along the way would have to be consulted and get their approval to move. And then they realized how difficult that was, and they kind of just left that to the side. And so that is something when I mentioned a while ago that the, to have to move that over here, just moving that along, not just disturbing it, but driving it along, you're absolutely right. Because the NWMO, that was the issue, is that we were pushing over and over again and saying, okay, so if there was an accident, whose responsibility is it? And how well educated and how well ready would those fire departments and the police, be ready to deal with such a situation? So you are absolutely correct, that, you know, moving that amount of cars, even trucks, even though it would just be one, it would still be a problem if there was an accident. So, thank you very much for bringing that up. And it is something that needs to be addressed in whatever, and that's where you get all of these other communities. So in whatever plan that they kind of bring forward, okay, so now we've got these answers to this year, but what happens if there's an accident along the way? Is there, I know they're gonna cover it, but if, you know, if there's a lot of water, is there gonna be any seepage anywhere that's gonna leak on the roads or whatever? Like, I think that there's a lot to take in, but I think more importantly, if there's an accident, so.
Yeah, I'd just like to respond to that point. When we started mobilizing everyone for our last town hall meeting, I actually did reach out to every clerk's department along between here and Nipissing First Nation. I think the problem is they're all smaller municipalities such as us. They have limited staff resources. To be honest, there wasn't a lot of interest. There was the odd clerk that would reach out saying, hey, can you give me an update? But I think now as we get more and more information, we get more data, we're gonna have to look at ways to get them more involved.
Good evening, thanks, everybody. I am kind of talking a little bit up in the heart. I'm a victim of Valley Lake. And Valley Lake in the early years, my parents, a lot of my siblings, a lot of my classmates lost their parents very young. Oh, sorry, I'll start over. I'm a victim of Valley Lake radium tailings, mid-60s, 70s child. Lost an uncle at 32 years old. My aunt left with 5 young boys. My dad died at 61, my brother at 52. These are all radium things. I remember in the early years, I was about 10 years old. There was a tailing breach, I think it was Bull Lake. And everything died in Bull Lake. No one said nothing. Carried on. With today's technology and all of our supports and all our stuff, this may be a small thing for a guy in Toronto. But it's a big thing for us here in town. To see this happen again, I left Elliott Lake because of the rain. I remember when they dug around our house, because they used yellow cake on our homes. The radon was so high that I lost 3 sisters to brain cancer at a young age because of that. May not be the cost, but never told us that was the case. So we need to know. We all know the problem. Those people down in Toronto, they need to come up here. Give us an answer. Moving material is not the answer. The load capacity of that load on top of that bearing of that soil, can it handle it? Is it gonna push it deeper into the water table? No one can answer that. The movement, LA has a dust mitigation program. They don't move nothing off their site. We're gonna move stuff 180 kilometers back and forth. That's wrong. Thank you.
Anyone else brave enough to come forward?
Yeah.
This is your time to shine.
Hello, I'm Sandy Jocko. I'm from Birch Island, but I work for United Chiefs and Council of Mingo and Sing. And the chiefs wanted me to share. Well, that they wanted us to convey that their position regarding the transportation and storage of these materials has not changed. They do not support it and do not want the project to continue.
Fantastic, that's great news. Yeah, we're very, we would love to stand shoulder to shoulder with other First Nations communities. And, I think this is exactly the kind of thing that we should support each other with big environmental issues that can really impact not only our lifestyle, but our health, our drinking water. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Please approach us if you have more questions, call the office, if you need to. Anyway, but thank you so much for your support.
Oh, sorry, we need to close the meeting. Oh, sorry, everybody. I knew.
I don't know. We have to close the meeting. We have to close the meeting.
Yeah, just one second. We just have one motion to pass. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, everyone, we have one last motion, moved by Counselor Cote, second by Counselor McVeigh. Be it resolved that the meeting is now adjourned at 8:25 PM. All in favor? Carried.